Hello and welcome to the first episode of Gateway to Geats. Hell yeah, gonna be doing this every week. Episode 1 of Geats has dropped, been released. The Raw happened. I personally watched 2 different sub releases. Probably gonna stick to one going into the future just because consistency of intent, language, that kind of thing. They didn't seem too different. It was just more of a picking of verbiage in certain scenes and the use of certain tone indicators was appreciated in one release. So who knows into the future which release I will be watching, but I'll probably be sticking to one. But hey, Kamen Rider Geats episode 1. There's been a smattering of hype for it. It's been interesting. Not exactly sure what the greater scope of people's responses have been kind of keeping to myself on this kind of thing. We start this episode with our main Kamen Rider character looking out into a sea and flipping a Roman coin. Now, immediately, we're only a few seconds in and I have questions about like intent, symbolism, all that kind of stuff. Why is it a Roman coin? Why Roman specifically, and why not say a Japanese coin or a Chinese coin or like a variety of other cultural coins? Why specifically Roman? Are we also going to be dealing with elements of luck? I think we are. We'll get to that in a bit, but things I want to just kind of like pin to the thought board for you real quick. There's also the idea that kitsune are also associated with luck, so coin luck, that all might be elements there. Is there also a parallel element between the coin and the rider markers, or whatever whatever the verbiage is for them, that are in the center of the belts, because they're about the same size and they both have like an iconography of the face on them? Is there some level of parallelism that the show's trying to make there? Later on in the show, there are things such as power, making this world, this is your world, make the world in your image kind of language happens around there. And there's also brought up several times that there is monetary power, the money to be able to do what you want, and so on and so forth. The male character that we follow throughout this episode also brings up money in a variety of ways, such as not wanting to have to worry about it, while also is totally willing to give it up, so on and so forth. And that all linking to the coin we see in the very beginning is possibly an interesting thing. A woman comes up with a belt to our main Kamen Rider man and says basically, "Hey, you're a Kamen Rider." And the guy goes like, "Cool, thanks." She is wearing black and white. It is a unique costume, very cool, very interesting, but it is black and white. Could her costume be kind of something showing about binary states? Black and white, good and evil, win or lose, such as in a game. We then cut to what is probably going to be our main secondary writer. He is our follow character throughout this episode. In a business interview for a job. Throughout the scene, we show that he is thinking very much in macro terms. He's a very, very big picture guy. I want to help the world. I want to help people. I want, when asked, hey, what do you want to achieve? He basically gives the milquetoast boilerplate answer, world peace. And the interview person, and the person leading the interview basically goes like, dude, you need like personal wants. You need something that's like achievable for yourself. Through this, it seems that he has an unwillingness to take for themselves, that he is a very selfless kind of person and so forth. In fact, he brings up the idea of winning the lottery to a character he calls, and she points out like, you wouldn't even want to enter into it because you would rather give that money up to charity or conservationship or some kind of thing of that nature. And that kind of shows that he's unwilling to take even that small of a step for himself, that he would rather give up that little amount of money instead of using it on himself. which as a secondary character compared to a lot of the themes that are brought up is a very interesting character to have. Our follow character and the woman he called go out to eat. And she brought up the idea of like, if this was the last day on Earth, what would you like to eat? And he chose seemingly a very humble meal, Tanuki udon. And, you know, sure, you eat your comfort food, but this is another element to show that he does not want to take for himself, that he is happy with the basic necessities. He is happy with what he has and doesn't want for more, essentially. However, through their meal, we are then thrust into the state of action as a red barrier cuts between the two of them, causes some shenanigans, and then we find out that they are on two different sides of the barrier, and monsters start attacking. This is an abstract version, but considering everything that is presented throughout the episode, this is a way of showing like literal power of the game zone exerting a separation of people, and the monsters themselves coming in and using violence, which is a form of power, these Squid Knights. I like their designs. Yamato, I think, is a close approximation of what they their name go on, so on and so forth. I like their flavor. They're neat. They are very East Asian, but not in a hyper-specific kind of way. At least these versions of them are. I like their head design. It has a cool flavor. It feels otherworldly, but it feels otherworldly. Our follow character runs away, tries to get to safety because he can see that the woman he was with is in safety. So he's like, all right, cool, she's fine. I need to get safe. He runs into Neon, who is a rich girl streamer who the woman he was with was watching. Her main way of streaming is basically her running away from home, and presents another aspect again of power, and this time monetary power, of how even though seemingly someone can have monetary power, considering who might truly own that monetary power, one might become powerless. As before all this happened, we see her basically running away, doing her stream, when two bodyguards show up and go like, hey, we gotta take you home, and, you know, then all hell breaks loose. They run into each other, monsters are about to attack, and we are introduced to a secondary and a tertiary writer, Bufo, and Shirokuma, I think it was? Shiroe. I am wrong. But they come, save the characters, it's cool, whatever. They run away, do all that kind of stuff, as Shiroe basically leads them to safety. Bufo fights the monsters. After that, they have a brief back and forth about their actions, and it's a way to like communicate what power is, you know. Again, power has been being brought up in a variety of ways so far, and even more so later on. Shiroe goes like, hey, it's kind of like, it's my duty to like help people, you know, it's no big deal, I'll help you, all that kind of stuff. As the other character, Bufo, the purple bull, basically says like, you're not helping them out of a selfless desire, you're helping them because you will get points. And the guy argues against that, but either way, he does get points for it. And there is something to be said about selflessness in a world where you are rewarded for it, you know? Is it truly selfless when you know you will be rewarded for it in some way, you know? But a giant monster, a fortress, a castle appears and starts to wreck shit. And the people who know start freaking out, and the people who don't know start freaking out even more so. Destruction is happening all around as our two civilians get caught up in the crossfire. Neon, the streamer, begins to fall off the building they're on due to the destruction, as a character that we've been following tries to help, but is ultimately powerless to do so. And then we see our main Kamen Rider, Ace, shows up with his motorcycle, flies into the air, catches her, saves her from the debris and the destruction, you know, all that kind of stuff. And we are really shown his character kind of for the first time. He's an arrogant dickhead. He sees a cute girl and goes like, oh, hey, you know, that kind of thing. The guy shows up and he goes like, oh, shame, you got a boyfriend. They do the comedic, oh, we're not dating thing. And he goes like, oh, cool, so I have a chance? She then looks to the side and goes like, what the fuck is wrong with this guy? Fun little interaction. It's funny without being like overly like beat you over the head with this is a joke. I liked it. It was a fun little thing, and it shows that like he's cocky, he's arrogant, you know, that kind of stuff. Meanwhile, our follow character Keiwa starts to succumb to a feeling of powerlessness. He's looking at the world around him, seeing all the destruction and everything, goes like, the fuck's am I supposed to do? I'm just a person. This is kind of fucked. And after all that kind of stuff, Ace then makes basically what I'm presuming to be the statement of the show, what is the core theme that they're going to be talking about. That basically, you can end the bad world that you were living in. You can end it, and through your own power, you can make a better one. Really about self-determination and the power that you would need in order to accomplish goals such as that. That kind of squares in with a lot of the other elements that we've seen so far and talked about so far. So that's kind of where I'm feeling with that right now. So we'll see into the future. But that also means my prediction's way off, where I predicted it was much more about communication and that kind of thing. This is very much more of like, no, power, it's power. Which, you know what, good. You're dealing with a death game, you're dealing with battle royale elements. Power is a powerful power is a powerful topic to talk about and all this kind of stuff. So, but let's talk about the rider suits real quick. Buffa, I'm gonna say Buffa. Okay, this may just be me. Buffa reminds me of Diaboramon from Digimon. At least I'm pretty sure that's the one I'm thinking of. I am doing a Google real quick. Yes, it is Diaboramon. Okay. It's partially because of like the mask in the mouth in the mask, and the big giant gangly finger hand, which is a neat visual element. It's really cool. As well as the long hair in the back of the helmet. It's a neat touch. It again reminds me of Diaboramon, but also it kind of makes the whole thing feel a little bit more gross, might be the best word for it. He feels slimy. It matches the poison theme that the purple and the chainsaw are kind of like going with. It says poison, so I'm imagining it has some elements of that kind of stuff. Overall, I really like the suit. In motion, it looks really neat. Shirue, it's great to have a very basic Kamen Rider here, the kind of like side character suit. It also shows how like the more basic weapons will work with the suits, the more sparse armor, and the props that would go with them. Just a note on the prop, however, the crossbow looks to be unpainted plastic, which I am not against, partially because it looks like it's 3D printed, so maybe this might make it easier for production, might have more props of this kind of nature. It might also, they might be a little bit more willing to use these kind of props because they can be recreated in a little bit with a 3D printer. As long as they have the 3D models, they're good. So maybe they can throw them around a little bit and do more interesting things with them. Who knows? But the big dog, the big guy, we have Geats. Geats is nice. Geats is cool. He is a great, clean design. Color palette, good. It's simple. It's really solid color blocking on the suit, which just makes him really readable in action and that kind of thing. But it also just makes it real easy. He's an easy suit to look at, you know? It's easy to look at him. You're not trying to parse out information or details and everything. It also makes the different forms he takes throughout the episode feel more distinct, because the color blocks are so big and simple that a big change to them really goes a long way. He's also another dual power character like Double or Build, where they use two powers at the same time. Not really anything I can say about this at this point in time. It's just more of like, that's a cool concept. It creates interesting fight scenes so long as they actually use it as a element in it. I like the return of the scarf. Scarves are always a cool element in Kamen Rider costumes. I also like the exhaust on the legs when Boost is on the bottom. Because, like, on the motorcycle, which is its kind of, like, visual parallel, it looks like foxtails, which is, like, you know, fox, kitsune, all the elements lining up into that kind of stuff. But when he's wearing them as pants, it feels like flames. It makes him look fast and all that kind of stuff. It's a cool element. Another cool element I noticed was when Magnum is on the top, he has a collar that looks, I say collar, it's not like he has like a collar neck focused design detail that looks like a revolver chamber. It has multiple circles that can kind of like visually represent bullets, which cool element. But due to a little swoosh to the side, they also feel like Magatama, which is a Japanese amulet significant thing. I'm not exactly sure the best way to describe it, but I recognize that, and I thought that was a neat little element. Thought it was a neat element to have in there. And then we get to the fight scene. I dug this fight. It was a good fight, good action. It was well paced, and it felt like a big wrestler fighting a bunch of jobbers, which for a first episode is kind of what you want. This might be a weird divisive statement I'm gonna make. The way this Kamen Rider fights feels like a tokusatsu version of the Gunkata from John Wick. I know for a number of people, the first thing they look at when they see this fight scene isn't John Wick. It just gave me the way he moved just reminded me of those action scenes. It's the minimal movements for dodging attacks, the use of gunplay in multiple distances, close up, mid-range, long distance, all that kind of stuff, as well as using physical attacks such as punching and kicking to keep enemies away from them at a distance so you can shoot them. Really neat. It's cool. And I'm not saying it's exactly John Wicky, because he does do big giant flips, he does do bigger moves and so on and so forth, but there's elements of it that reminds me of it. And it does fit the like gamer idea. He's very specific with his shots, but he's shooting a lot. He's a gamer. He's a Apex Legends guy. He's a Fortnite dude. Expect him to do a default dance or some kind. It looks good. It looks good. It looks solid. The rider kick is pretty good. It's nothing like too new, too spectacular, too out of the ordinary, but it's a good bit of building blocks for a finishing move, and you can tell it can be made bigger and smaller depending on the need of the story. So that, I think, is a very important part for a very story-heavy element such as that. But yeah, the climax, it ends with a big, bombastic, giant monster fight. CG is a little ropey, but it's not in a take you out of it way, and more in a I can see the wires way. And sometimes you want to see the wires, and I want to see the wires often. It also has classic Japanese buildings on the monster. So are those references to tradition or maybe government? There should be a reason why they're there. They are a cool visual element. They make the monster feel otherworldly while also feeling of this world. Like they built those buildings on top of it, and they didn't know it was there. But could these be elements of like if it is tradition, could that be a reference to the idea of tradition being a form of power that you can hold over people? But then we end the fight. Ace comes down, Geats, and basically goes like, all right, cool, I beat the thing, so hey, character we've been following for the episode, I hope you enjoy the new world. Yeah. And he goes like, what the fuck are you talking about? And then the buildings start reversing their destruction, and he kind of goes through, like, the best way I can describe it, like a little freak out. He wakes up in bed and goes like, fucking wow, that was a crazy ass dream. Goes about his day, and he goes to the same udon shop he went to and was like, hey, guy, did something bad happen to you yesterday? And he's like, nah, you probably were dreaming. And he's like, oh yeah, sure. Then we see the woman in black and white come to the character we've been following and says like, hey, you've been selected to be a Kamen Rider. And we see that she does this several times to a bunch of other people, and it's like, oh, okay, something's happening, you know? That just because they said the world ended and all that kind of stuff, and there was a winner for the game that they were having, the game continues. So is this more like The World Ends With You, where the game happens in a regular interval and it's an important part of the system, you know? Or did Geats, with his win, wish for the game to continue in some way? And on that note, he says he got to remake the world and make the world the way he wanted it. How did he want the world to be made? In what ways did he change the world? Because from our brief interactions with it so far, it doesn't seem like anything has changed. It seems pretty much like the world we knew beforehand. So, what changes did he make? Are they going to play into the idea of small changes versus large changes? And that fact, is that going to be part of Geats' motivation? Is that going to be part of Geats' motivation where he wants to continuously win and only make small improvements to the world versus other players who would rather radically change it for the better or for the worse? Like, is that going to be playing into it somehow? Or maybe that's part of the rule of the game, that you can only make small changes to the world, and encouraging players to re-enter the game to change the world in more ways. Could that be a way that this is working? Again, these are all plot elements that will be explained, and this is more speculation and like theory crafting and like, oh, what's gonna happen? Who knows? But yeah, several people are now picked to be Kamen Riders. We see little vignettes with all of them, and the question I have immediately is, okay, how are these people picked? Is it like Digimon, where these 6 kids looked at this giant Digimon fight and they got imprinted with something, so now they're the Digi-Destined? Or is it more of just like random chance? Is it some like element of you are longing for something that you can find in the game, so on and so forth? And I imagine that the show will dive into that and answer these questions with these characters. It's just more of like, I want to ask a question now. But then we do see Geats in kind of like an ushering role. He's looking out into the world and saying like, how will you enjoy my new world? How will you enjoy the world I've made? So my question is he going to be less of a main character, less of a focal point protagonist, and he's going to be more of like a mysterious figure? He shows up at the end, fights the big monster kind of thing. Is he going to be more antagonistic to our focus follow character that we've been following for the episode? Is he going to be more of an antagonist for the Kamen Riders in general? Like, that last scene just gave me, like, what if the happy birthday guy in O's was a Kamen Rider himself? That's the vibe it kind of gave me, which is interesting. We, at the very, very end of the show, we have what may be a rule of the game, or just more of, like, thematic tone setting of, like, you're picked for a Kamen Rider. If you choose to be one, there's no turning back kind of thing. It's a nice little bit of tone setting. It's really cool. It does feel a little bit like the Death Note anime, where in between sections when they would show commercials with the eye catch, where they would explain the rules of the Death Note. It's not exact parallels, but I thought it was like, it activated a memory in my head, and I thought it was neat. So overall, I enjoyed this episode. There was a lot of little things that kind of like intrigued me, made me ask questions, made me curious of what these things mean. The show laid out a bunch of plot hooks for the future that they can pick up on, while not necessarily developing any of them so well that it would feel weird if they dropped them. You know, it's very much like it's asking questions. It doesn't give you a ton of answers. It drops you into this world, this mystery, and all this kind of stuff. So there's a lot of directions they can go. It's interesting. It's fascinating. There's a lot of things that can like be looked at through thematic elements and through thematic lenses and all this kind of stuff. It is overall a very interesting first episode, and partially because of the way they structure the plot and everything. It does feel like it's in the middle of the story, because while our focal characters are thrusted into this world and have no information, the characters who have action, who have the ability to engage with the plot, already know all this information. They're already knee-deep in all of this stuff. So it creates a cool dichotomy, and it's probably going to lead into interesting conversations in the future between all of these characters. So yeah, Kamen Rider Geats, episode 1 in the bag. Hopefully you liked this video. If you did, give me a thumbs up. Leave a comment discussing some elements you want to discuss about the episode. Subscribe to the channel so you can get the next Gateway to Geats. And until then, I hope you have a lovely time.